not everything we do or undertake is an astonishing success, but the astonishing success is that we are trying and we're doing things. This is the
Mm.
astonishing success. I'm a totally great fan of AI, but not still in the therapeutic space, because I think the human contact, when you talk to somebody, it's both knowing that there is this other human on the other side who too will have gone through difficult experiences, because we all do.
Dr. Agnieszka Piotrowska, an award-winning filmmaker, author, and psychoanalytic scholar, helps creatives and researchers find their voice and balance in an age of technological transformation. Her deep curiosity about love, ethics, and technology continues to push the boundaries of what it means to be human.
It's easy to start feeling I don't mean anything. And I think this is not good. We still have to believe and push, thinking if there are enough of good people in the world pushing forward in positive ways, then we will make a difference. What does it mean to be ethical in society and culture? And what can we do to contribute positively to it? And of course, through education in particular, but also through mentorship, through life coaching, through at every level, educators are judged by the results. If you think about it like this, it's not helpful, because you lose the individual, you lose your student, you lose the person, you lose your... Dr. Agnieszka, thank you so much for joining this conversation. We have met on a different context, but I was always curious to find out more about your professional background in education. So here we are now. Thank you for joining. Well, thank you so much. It's really exciting and wonderful to meet you again on Zoom. But yes, it's great that we did in fact meet in person, which is wonderful. I always think the relationships which start in person are always kind of stronger. So wonderful to be here. I agree. I agree. So tell me about your latest passion, because we haven't spoken for about, I don't know, 6 months. Yeah, exactly. Probably 6 months. So I've been incredibly busy in the last 6 months, and I think the word busy is now kind of has this kind of negative connotation. So people are trying not to say busy. Have you noticed this? They're trying to say I have a lot on, or some other word instead of busy. But busy, I think, can be good if it's kind of deployed in the right way. So I have been busy, meaning in a good way. I've really been developing new projects. I've been focusing both on the Scholars Mentor, which is my new initiative we'll talk about. I did finish the book, the Scholars Mentor book, the guides, which then we're publishing. But I also was finishing another whole academic project in terms of writing, which finished. So I've been kind of coaching, and there's something happened which I didn't allow for, it just happened. So I'm now life coaching also high performing women, actually, who get stuck in some areas of life. And this is something that I've been asked to do, so that's fun. And I'm very much writing about the human relationship with the AI, which also is very relevant for higher education and education generally. And that's something also to discuss, I think. Wow, so many topics. How do you feel about it? You mentioned like being, how is multitasking for you? How is it different from other people? I like to think about a sort of multiplicity of passions and interests, but of course there is an underlying theme, which is, I suppose, it's a big philosophical question, and it's a big philosophical question in education. And this is the philosophical question which goes back centuries, which is how to live well. What does it mean to be ethical in society and culture? And what can we do to contribute positively to it? And of course, through education in particular, but also through mentorship, through life coaching, through, some of my life coaching definitely have elements of psychotherapy, because of my background, my PhD is in psychoanalysis and film, but very much psychotherapeutic thinking. So the issue is, I think, for everybody, literally everybody, every person you talk to and every person I talk to in life, is how can we contribute positively to the world in a situation that we find ourselves in political situation, which is, I think, particularly difficult. And maybe, maybe every moment in time is particularly difficult, but it feels like this one is really, really a special moment, not necessarily in a good way, because huge decisions are being made, a lot of them without us, without our kind of involvement. Big politicians make them. And so it's easy to start feeling, I don't mean anything. And I think this is not good. We still have to believe and push, thinking that if there are enough of good people in the world pushing forward in positive ways, then we will make a difference.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Do you see a shift in the needs that people, like the people you coach now or the people you mentor, is there a shift in their needs? What do they need now?
I think that it's a really good and interesting question to consider. I think some themes, I think, really are general, because I think in education, and I'm sure you know it from your experience and from your practice and from your research and talking to people, some things you could argue have been the same, which is that in order to educate anybody or give people the best education, there's a number of things that need to be in place. But certainly the key one is encourage them to be passionate about learning, encourage them to have curiosity to know more than there is. And then there'll be issues, which you talk about a lot. How do you do it? Through what tools? How? And I think the minute it's interesting because we have AI, so very quickly, and I've been talking to some teachers in middle schools, and they're sort of in despair, some of them, because very young people are beginning to ask ChatGPT and Claude and other platforms to write for them without engaging creatively with these tools. So I think this is a particular moment in time, because it's important at every level, it seems, to encourage students to be curious, accept the new technology. It's not even future technologies, it's technology now, because there's no point. You're not going to succeed in sticking the genie back in the bottle, are you really? So the issue is, how do we do this? And how do we convince young people, and sometimes very young people, that learning is fun, will empower them, that reading a book, holding on to a physical book is actually more fun than asking for a summary from some AI. And then maybe once you know a little more, it's so much fun to engage in some kind of conversations with these tools or platforms or co-creators. But you're not going to be a co-creator in anything if you don't know what you're talking about, right? If you're just sticking into a prompt, do this and this for me.
Yeah.
I think this is a big challenge. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a big challenge because humans, as we know, often just will go with the line of least resistance. Can't be bothered. So that's the thing you somehow need to teach young people more than anything, that the line of least resistance might seem attractive to begin with, but in fact, is not that attractive long term, because it will just lead to boredom and all kinds of negative things, and even possibly lead to mental health issues, which you talk about as well. Because, how do we, what does it really mean to be well? What is the well-being? Obviously some things are obvious and basic, get enough sleep, go for a walk at least once a day, smile, be happy that you are on this planet at all, because the chances of you arriving here are minute. So that's what I practice every day. I think, oh, I'm so happy I'm alive. What can I do? What else can I do? But clearly some people, which you talk about a lot, teachers can get overwhelmed. Educational leaders can get overwhelmed and just can be fed up with it all, right? So the issues is, as how can you empower people to feel differently about their where they are in the world, even if at times it feels tough.
Yeah. And now we are all in this transition period, and obviously we had started using our mind creatively before AI. So
Exactly.
we are not just now mixing, but in a couple of years, there are
Exactly.
going to be young ones who have never used their creative mind actively. They will just go into AI and
Exactly.
expect results from there. So they will never walk that path of using how do I go into flow state or how do I use my creative mind. So
Well,
what is
so
your
I think
advice?
this is crucial, and educators at any level, because at the moment I only really work with postgraduate and research students. So, but colleagues, and I have to say, which is not good. I have recently seen a piece of work by a research student, which clearly was AI generated. It wasn't even particularly adjusted, or it was just ridiculous. So in a conversation, then I asked about some references that the person quoted, and they couldn't talk about it because they hadn't read it. They just couldn't even engage with it.
Mm,
So at any level, the first thing to do, which can be tricky, but it is a habit, and we'll talk about habits, would be still to insist and encourage people on these, on things like reading books to begin with, because if you don't know that, you really, you're going to be stuffed. And this is, and I think for us, because we're trying to reimagine the future in which people don't think it's an obvious thing to do to be reading as part of your education. So it's just things, oh my God, that's it. I think it's not that's it. We have to try and get early on to a position where children really think reading is fun and it's wonderful, and perhaps not introduce to various other tools too early. But it
yeah.
goes on, it's quite, but it is, I think it is a transitional period. And at higher education, I think it's of crucial importance to um, provide some kind of alternative way of thinking about these AI tools. But I think it's at higher level, which is that they could be co-creators as long as you know enough. And then you could deploy other strategies of sort of gaming as well to make it more fun. It's less fun if you know very little, but it is possible, I think, and it will be necessary to somehow combine all these strategies. And I really believe that there's a lot of kind of fear around artificial intelligence. I think it's extremely unhelpful. That's why I think I've started kind of doing my own experiments, and that's why I write about it. And now I'm writing about our relationship with the sort of artificial intelligence tools and platforms from the point of view of psychoanalysis, because I think it's really interesting to see where we position ourselves in this conversation, and how
Wow.
much, what can we learn and how much we can influence all kinds of things through it. But you're not going to influence anything, frankly, if you have not learned the basic, as you say, of things which our generations have gone through. So the huge challenge for particularly educators at the early stages is to still be able, and this is exactly where I think our various things converge, because it's important to make it attractive to people, that learning is fun, that is an empowering thing that will also, for its own reason, not necessarily so in higher education will be, can I get a job? I think this is really unfortunate, because if you're going to be good at whatever you do, you will get a job and you will also be able to use these technological tools to do this. But if you don't like continuous learning, if you're not prepared to adapt continuously with changing times, and quite quickly you get stuffed. So
Yeah.
because there will be people, and there are people who are doing it, and also a lot of boring jobs, I mean, hopefully can be done. Hopefully, I say, because I'm looking forward to having more efficient digital assistants. And I think it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. So In terms of what I feel is important for the people I particularly work with, so research students, and particularly I'm talking about international research students, it's the issue of well-being, it's the issue of mental health, meaning well-being. The statistics, which I even mentioned the other day, and I mentioned to you, are really horrendous, that in terms of 70% of international research students, or any international students, suffer from mental health issues like depression, or they're tired, or they're homesick. And of course, you could say, well, you will be homesick if you're not at home, but these things can then spill over to other issues, which, if not caught quickly, can translate themselves into, negative situations. So it's in terms of what I really believe in and what I do, working with various clients outside of the discipline of supervising people in their own discipline, which in my situation is, if I supervise a PhD student, it would be film or gender studies or feminist studies or post-colonial or psychoanalysis, right? But what we do in Scholars Mentor, we coach across disciplines, and basically we coach to improve students' well-being and teach them a variety of tools, including slightly alternative tools like meditation, particularly also using visualization as part of the meditation, and thinking about manifesting, not as sticking some couple of pictures on the board. Although one of my former PhD students, we used to stick a card, like pretend credit card, which said doctor this and this, which helped her. But it's the issue of finding the peace in yourself through a variety of tools, including exercise, including, of course, talking to friends, reading, but also meditation, I think is wonderful. And I teach people basic meditation, which I have learned myself through Mind Valley training. So the continuous curiosity that I have and that I try and share with people is something that can be your tool throughout your lives. But of course, if you don't, if you've never been taught this as a child, then it's that much harder. It's very possible. You can teach people to be curious at any moment in time. But this is where, teachers at schools really, this is their role.
Yeah.
Key
So
role.
you said 70% of the students you mentor?
No, 70%, not the students. The students I mentor very quickly get better, obviously. There's proper research. It's a proper BBC. It's a sample. It's a very large sample of international research students in this country, in the UK. And 70% of them say that they're lonely, homesick, get depressed at times. It's a lot of people, 70, so it's a completely, and kind of everybody sort of knows it. I mean, if you really, at university systems, if you declare that you have mental health issues, there will be some support given. My point is that before maybe you have to start declaring it.
Yeah.
It is also good to just say, I'm not productive, I'm not completely happy, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. And then, it's important to support people. I mean, my book, you don't have to, of course, be life coach. We are welcome, and there are lots of people working with me and very experienced coaches. So of course, come and we will help you. But it's also possible for you to work yourself on your own mindset. And certainly my book, The Scholar's Mentor's Guide, helps, but clearly there are many other resources.
What are the skills you think they are lacking, and what skills do you help them with?
It's once you get to being a research student, it means typically you would have done the first degree and the second degree. So most people have had masters already. So now you're supposed to be on this journey of your own exploration, that you really are doing the project that you want to do. This is your independent research. So you're already supposed to be, you know, a researcher and a scholar rather than a student. So people get stuck on a variety of levels. Sometimes they feel that they didn't embark upon this journey because they wanted to, but rather because their families wanted to, very typical, or because they thought they liked this subject, but actually there's something else that they feel passionate about or could feel passionate about. So a lot of my actual former students who are now doctors and working at universities, certainly I can really think of a few who changed under my it's not even guidance. I just said, look, if you want to do something else, why don't we try and redirect you into the direction where you actually feel happy about your research? And they did it, and they, you know, they're very successful people now, and I'm really proud of them. And some of them are on the advisory board of the Scholars Mentor. But a lot of people at universities wouldn't encourage your researcher to change the direction of travel because for fear, because people, you know, supervisors will think, oh my God, and now what? Then they will drop out, because there is a big dropout rate still in terms of the doctoral journey, like almost half people who start or more drop out. So
but when you see that, you're not scared to help them, to hold them.
I know. But then also you could say to me, yeah, so maybe I am lucky because I'm a bold person, maybe you would say. And I would say, I was not a bold person originally. Absolutely not. When I was a little girl at school in Poland, I was a little scared, little blonde girl, not speaking in class, not doing anything. And I remember my mother coming back from a parents' evening saying, why don't you say anything? You have so much to say. Why do you sit there and never speak? And my mother, whom actually I had a difficult relationship with going forward, but at that moment in time, she said, and so I'm grateful, she said, look, why don't you just speak? Nobody frankly cares. Nobody will judge you. Just say what you have to say. Be engaged in the class. It'd be more interesting for you to have a conversation with your peers and the teacher. And she said, promise me you'll try tomorrow. So I started trying.
Oh,
But
okay.
this is what I mean. You know, you've got to have somebody, and it could be a parent or it could be a teacher, who would say, why are you sitting there not engaged? Maybe if you're engaged, it would be more fun, you know? And it always is the same story in education. It really, somehow it's just hard because at every level, educators are judged by the results, of course, which is, are people doing well? Are students doing well? Are they achieving the grades? Is the retention good at university? What happens? And so if you think about it like this, it's not helpful, because you lose the individual, you lose your student, you lose the person, you lose your coachee if they come to you as clients. It's always, you know, how can I help you so that then you can help yourself? And this is where your whole story of well-being and the strength of your you know, personality well-being comes into it. So you know who you are. You as a teacher, as an educator, as a leader, as a mentor. And this is not something, oh, I know who I am, excellent. It's a continuous process. It's almost like a daily discovery. And if you know this, and if you can then empower your students to also know it, and not think that you have to speak from the position of this amazing knowledge. No. You speak from a position of curiosity and almost non-knowledge, and hope and encourage people to go with you. And also another important thing, which is a big issue, I think, in education across, and certainly in higher education, is that the stated objective in higher education is let people experiment. Them experiment certainly with creative subjects. They come to university and they are supposed to be able to experiment, so they learn.
But it's a stated objective.
It's the stated objective, but the truth is, because of the inherent fear, and you could say politically, it is the neoliberal kind of attitude of, you know, let's just be judged by results rather than the actual process. However, the stated objective is this. The reality is very different. The experimentation is often encouraged within a tiny, tiny range, both for the academic staff and students. And so the default position is, let's be safe, let's not experiment, let's just somehow cruise through because it could be safer. Of course, the reality is that it's not at all safer, because if you don't develop the curiosity, the ability to experiment, then if something goes wrong in your life, and it will, because it always does, a little bit, you will not be able to deal with it. You simply, you know, the tool, the experimentation, which is also, of course, means you have to take action of some sort, otherwise you can't experiment, obviously. But the ability to experiment will make you more adaptable. So even if you do fail, this is the whole thing. Not everything we do or undertake is an astonishing success, but the astonishing success is that we are trying and we're doing things. This is the astonishing success. However, with education, of course, people have to hit at any level. They have to pass exams. They have to get their qualifications. They have to keep going. Otherwise, you know, there's a problem. I would still argue, though, that if you've learned that curiosity is the key thing, you can always come back, right, to finish your qualification later on. If you haven't learned it, the curiosity is a default position, then it's more problematic, you know? So you say to me, what do we do with the young people who can turn to these AI platforms straight away? You know, how do we teach them that reading, you know, Jane Austen and like as a book, it's more fun than reading a summary? It is up to the educators to make it fun and to create spaces in which, perhaps to begin with, you gently push the student to experiment with it. But yes, it's a challenge, right?
So you have one student, you start mentoring them, and if you can remember one case you can share with us, you mentor them and then you realize that they're not passionate about it and they're the opposite, like they're overwhelmed and they don't know how to move on. They don't want to move on. What is your mentorship like?
Well, people come to me or to us, they they typically are very scared because they do want to keep going, and otherwise they wouldn't seek help. So they're already taking a step, saying, you know, I have these issues, I am procrastinating. I mean, typically people would say, I'm not writing, and I should be, or I'm just not progressing with my research, and I'm paralyzed, and I think this is, you know, and I don't know why. But so the first thing to discover is why. So I do often exercises, which is which is to do with learning about yourself is the first thing. So in the book, I talk about lion methodology, which is basically to learn, to inspire, to organize your mind, and then be able to take next steps. But to learn, so if you come to me and say, I am, you know, bored and I just think this topic, it doesn't interest me so much anymore, which is, you know, it's not amazing. If you're doing a PhD, it takes you at least 3 years, usually typically 4 or 5 or more in the States, then it is possible to slightly think, oh, I can't look at this page anymore, I can't be bothered to rewrite it. So what certainly with one person I can think of, you say, I have encouraged her. She started being passionate about something else. It was too late to switch because she was submitting like in 8 months' time. You can't switch at the last minute with a
Okay.
PhD. You have to then see through. However, what you can do is find out and discover what is your current passion. And she did have a very clear passion, which wasn't completely at that point part of her thesis. It actually was related. So the job was to try and get her to think about how she could shift her mindset so that she could incorporate this passion into her writing. And also not to try, a lot of this is so typical for research students as well. On the last stretch, they want to be perfect because they've spent all this time doing stuff, and now they're doing something and it's not clearly not perfect because they know, because they're already experts in the field. So some of the attitude could be, so what's the point? If it's not perfect after all this, what's the point? So then the shift is, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this is the psychoanalytical approach. So Winnicott says, just has to be good enough. You know? And then within this, you can find your passion, and you will find your passion. So sometimes this is the clever trick, because at the same time you say you have to have a space in which you develop and grow, however you look at it. But at the same time, in education, we do expect people to hit clear goals at some point or other, right? That's what education is. So you can't just be growing without, that's, you know, without a result. And personally, I really like it now. I hated exams and hitting deadlines, and now I really like it. And as you know, I like collecting my various certificates. It's almost like a game for me. So the big thing is to shift from, in education, this is an obligation, to no, this is fun, this is game, this is play. So let me have another little, award that says, yes, I'm still a learner.
And this student was successful eventually.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, really, really successful. I mean, this is quite extraordinary, and it's the same with when you work with anybody, but of course, when you work with people, that's why the first thing is and everybody who comes to you and you will know it as to for help, to be coached, have to, anybody who says, I want to change, really has to want to change. I want to have a transformation, then yeah, I can help you with the transformation. But if you say, oh, I want transformation, but I don't really, because I like sleeping every day until it's noon, then there's a problem, because you've got to, it's like in this famous the joke about somebody praying to God that they want to win $1 million in a lottery. Please, God, I just deserve it. I've been so good. I want to win my $1 million, please, in a lottery. And goes on, and eventually God opens the sky, opens the heavens, says, please go and buy your ticket. A chance to help you. You've got to still take your steps. God is not going to help you if you're not going to buy a ticket to lottery, even if you're praying every day. So it's silly, but a lot of, I mean, you'd be, really, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but it is quite surprising how people would say, oh, I really want to write this book. I'm carrying this book in me, the book, because I also work with creative people who have procrastination. I have the book in me. I need to write it. And then you'd say, well, okay, have you actually written anything? Have you got a daily schedule when you write a bit every day? And they would say, no, because it's too painful. Then it really sounds bizarre. And then you'd say to me, well, why do they then forget it? Don't write it. Go do something else. No, I definitely want to try and write the book because I owe it to myself. So that sounds so interesting. So then one of the exercises, which is a classic coaching exercise, is getting people to imagine what they would be like in 3 years' time, and really try and imagine it. And if that is in your vision, then I'm sorry to say, I've got to get back to now and take these basic steps. in a slightly, you know, dare I say it, disciplined way. And
especially for a book.
and then people do it, you know, and if they don't, no, with the research students, it's to a certain extent, it's almost easier because they, you know, people are highly motivated really to have got there and to come to us and to me, they usually really want to see progress because they're really stuck. So it's not, you know, as soon as you empower somebody to be able to identify their negative thoughts as well and grab them, it's like an object, and put them aside, put them in a lovely golden light and sending them away, for a start, it can really help, you know. So, but other individuals, you know, can sometimes have a complete, you know, fantasy life as well of saying, I want to do this and this, but I'm not doing it at all. Like, I mean, to be honest, that's why I think I'm grateful to you. Actually, to you personally, I am, because when we met, I almost sounded like this myself, of course. I said, oh, I want to do this and this, but I don't really like posting on social media. And you said to me, well, you have to.
You have to. Did I say that?
No, you just don't. And actually, I really, it was one of these things in life that actually was very important, and it was you know, I was grateful, and it was so nice.
Probably said just do it and then you will like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Just
you
get
feel the need
on.
that you have to do it, so just do it without a lot of overthinking, and then you
Exactly.
will eventually like what you're writing, because at the start nobody likes what they're writing, obviously.
And also different people, you know, approach this. I mean, there's some things that I still don't like about social media, and maybe it will take me a little while to get to it, like but you know, at the minute it's also the question of time, but we'll see. But I think it's the key thing for somebody, so in my case it was in fact you, to say, and you said various other things, I'm not going to be revealing here to everybody, but it is, you know, sometimes important. It could be a friend, for somebody to say, oh, come on. You can't just hope for this manna from heaven. Just take these steps. This is good to have a vision. Perfect. Wonderful. But take these steps
and you've made lots of progress, you have to acknowledge
yes,
that to
exactly.
yourself.
Yeah, no,
Then
absolutely.
you just have the acknowledgement pushing you forward.
Yes, no,
Acknowledging yourself.
absolutely. And so, like you say, what else would I do? I would do really basic things, even with people who are quite high achievers, you know, and you know that too in your coaching practice, I'm sure. So you're asking people to make simple steps every day, right? Daily. They could be do something, you know. So in terms of I always say to people, do a simple meditation practice, and I teach them really simple thing, just for a few minutes, literally sometimes for 5 minutes, to have a moment with some, you know, guidance. So I tell them what it is, and to think, is this am I moving towards the person that I really want to be more than the person I am now? And also, it doesn't mean you have to abandon the person you are now at all. No. It's just the issue of building on your strengths and saying, okay, my weaknesses are also part of who I am. It's okay. And we take these and somehow develop them, right? And there's also a lot of people, research students and other people, everybody almost, has some kind of negative experience in their lives, right? Like, and let's just say a sort of trauma that they had either early on or later. I mean, everybody, it's not as
exactly, yeah.
And so the issue is, how can we then take that negative experience and walk through it, you know, work through it psychoanalytically, you would say, not put it in some box, not pretend everything is amazing, but rather say, okay, this is my trauma, this is my loss, can we together look at it a little bit? This is why I think working with somebody can be helpful, because it's and I would say it's better if it's a human being than an AI. And I'm a totally great fan of AI, but not still in the therapeutic space, because I think the human contact, when you talk to somebody, it's both knowing that there is this other human on the other side who too will have gone through difficult experiences, because we all do. That matters. And then, you know, because the basic things that I talk about, you know, you can easily look them up, really. And why do you need anybody? Just go through them. But somehow I think the human presence, both as a teacher or a coach or somebody who has been through some of this experience, is helpful and can be transformative. And this is why, again, not everybody would agree with this at all. But I think as a coach that my life experiences matter. And education matters. Not everybody, a lot of people say it doesn't matter, you can just come into it and learn a couple of things. And I personally disagree. I like both the fact that I always like to approach things from a very good position of education, yes. So I always get my qualifications. I wouldn't feel comfortable without them coaching you. But also my life experience matters. So I would never, I just wouldn't offer to coach somebody if I hadn't had also some experience of what they may have gone through. And as I say, it's not a super popular opinion, but that's what I feel. So with the research students, is both, of course, I've gone through a PhD and I did it quickly and successfully. However, even for myself, because I was a student, there were moments inside the process where I thought, you know what, I'm just going to drop out. This is just stupid. I don't need this, you know, shit.
And because you have had the experience and thoughts, now you can hold space for all these people and say,
yes, but it's also not just my experience, because I've also had, you know, a number of my own PhD students whom I've led to completion. So they, I feel confident. And then I noticed, as in my experience as a supervisor, that some of my, I would say, most successful former PhD students who are doing really well in the real world now, some of them had real issues and challenges beyond a simple academic thing and need different kind of support. And because I had the psychotherapeutic training already and interest, and I loved them, I was able to do this. I created time. At the moment, it's a fact. In higher education and maybe in any education, people are so overworked that they a lot of the time don't have a capacity to be offering more than just, you know, teaching people the basics. That's the problem. And that is, you know, some kind of shift in how the system works. This is where that needs to take initiative.
What are your basics that everybody should learn when they're young? You mentioned about reading books.
No, my basic is the most basic thing is curiosity. This is the most basic thing. But yes, definitely.
How do you cultivate curiosity in kids?
Well, I will say I'm definitely not a early years specialist educator. You know, I'm a senior fellow of Higher Education Academy, so I know more about higher education. But I do think the steps in education are really always the same. You know, how do you get anybody interested in anything? So if I was, I mean, I literally hadn't thought about it, but if I was teaching literature now, I may well start with a clip of a film, actually, some sort of adaptation, because people like moving images, to say, okay, this is an adaptation, fine, but can we go back to the actual text? Can we see what it was like? And can you, in your own mind, imagine how you might like to adapt it? Because I think the important thing is immediately to make a student a co-creator, right? And that's if you offer an environment
key.
in a school or a classroom which they immediately become a co-creator of something, particularly in the current climate, then we have a chance of engagement, right? Whereas if you just say, oh, do this and hit, people are just not going to do it because they have the other alternative, even the doom scroll, it's just ridiculous. And so it's a huge challenge because, as you say rightly, in 10 years or 20, maybe nobody will remember what it feels like to sit down and read a book and imagine the whole world yourself, right? This is somehow the big challenge that we do need to teach them. That's the real issue with, and then your conversation with this AI could be a lot more interesting. But I'm sure they are, obviously there's going to be, I was thinking AI bots who will be amazing teachers, I'm sure, but still we as humans have something special. We need to have confidence in this rather than being this utter fear of being, overwhelmed by artificial intelligence. And the challenge at the minute, I feel also strongly the questions are not positioned correctly in terms of our attitude to artificial intelligence, because it's very much still, let's see if we can stick the genie back in the bottle. You're not going to succeed in that, are you really? There's all kinds of things and there's no time almost, we need to creatively make up some ways in which to deal without being fearful, but rather embracing the current situation. I mean, even surely at most basic level, I mean, you talk about it quite a lot, but I feel strongly whoever leads the way as an educator or other kind of leader has to feel well themselves. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but well enough. So some things have to be going well. And
so they can model this to.
Yeah, exactly. So they can share, because you have to have really a lot of energy, a lot of vision, a lot of strength to share with other people, particularly in a position of as a teacher, educator, or leader. And there's much to do.
Yeah. So for somebody who is now like starting their like the studies in becoming a PhD student, what signs should they be aware of and look for your advice or for another mentor's advice? Like, what are the initial signs before it's too late, before they burn out?
Well, the first thing, and it's, it is very individual, obviously. People who come, so I was a mature student, meaning as a PhD student, meaning that I already had life experiences and industry experience and successes in it. So, and I was super careful how I chose where I studied, and because I had amazing supervisors, like world-class famous supervisors.
So you drew your confidence from your previous experience and your previous success.
Yes, exactly. So that's
But for somebody who is like
exactly.
25,
Yeah. So I think the first thing to know is that a research program, a PhD program is really is your independent research. And it is such an obvious thing to say, and many people do not understand it. They still think somehow somebody's going to teach them, and they will not. And they do not have time or capacity. It just is not going to happen. So if you arrive, you immediately feel overwhelmed. In addition, you're in a different country, different city. You might have even issues with the language. And you start thinking, and people even start having panic attacks and so on, then yes, this would be the first moment to think, is there other people who can help? And maybe informally, not in the structures and systems, so that I can carry on. That's the first thing to do. Later on, typically, people will start thinking, as I say, this is not quite what I want to do. or this is not, and I don't really, because the minute that in this country, in the UK, and I think in any country, there are thresholds. They're introduced from school systems, so you still have to hit it after year 1, 2, or whatever after, and so a lot of people get very anxious over these thresholds because there's typically an element of written work, and then you have to, it's like a mini viva, you have to defend it. So what we do also is very much prepare people for these type of vivas, interviews as well, and in order to be able to defend your ideas early on and enjoy talking about it. So that's another thing that often people are very anxious about. And if you're too anxious about the upcoming, say, upgrade or different names, and if you haven't been empowered, then some people say, you know what, I just can't deal with it, and instead do something else. So that's where actually it's so important to work with somebody. Sometimes your supervisor can help, but typically, as I said, at the moment, honestly, people just so snowed under with various things and fear that it's hard. So you, as a research student, will have to find initiative to seek help elsewhere, either, of course, with us, obviously, or with somebody like that, or with peers, which is good. But the whole peer thing is also important to say. Sometimes, you know, people would sit together and just complain, and it's just like this. No. So don't do that. Then it doesn't help.
Okay.
To find somebody, like even I found you, or you know, God delivered you to me to say, "Oi, you know, there are other ways of thinking about it. It doesn't just have to be like you have to be perfect. You just have to do these things and then find joy and experience and learning in it, right?" And so it's a number of things that you need to watch and think, how can I move forward? And I think what we do is there's loads of people who do various things to do with PhD, this and that. I think what we do is unique because both of my personal direct experience of going through PhD myself and also supervising, you know, a whole number of PhD students to completion, in addition to then supporting and mentoring other people. So that is unique, and our focus on mindset and well-being, and also including spiritual well-being, is part of it. Not just, yes, I know the academic system, and I'm still in it, supervising PhD students at British universities and at Staffordshire and Oxford Brookes, but very part-time because so I know very well how to get people through the system, and that is super important to know and offer that practical knowledge. But at the same time, this other knowledge is equally important, or perhaps more important, I would venture, you know. So you still, whoever you are, need to look into your heart and say, what is it that I really need to grow and to begin to achieve what I really want? And everybody in this kind of group of coaches would say fear is not helpful and fear is paralyzing. But the issue is, how then do you get out of that fear? That's the key question, right? That's the clever trick. And I certainly remember one of my actual former students who, it was a very complicated journey, and they did have all kinds of personal issues, but on the very, very, very last stretch, they said to me, honestly, even after all these years, I don't think I can go to the very final stretch. And do you know what I did? I said to them, it's been years. I said, if there's no, and that person said, I find no motivation anymore. I've lost it. I don't even understand or remember why. And there was, you know, that person was so close. It was just a big push to finish the thing and then prepare for the Viva. And I said, look, do it for me. Honestly, I shouldn't be saying it, but if there's nobody else in the world you're doing it for, not even for yourself, just please do it for me. And you know what? It somehow got through to them. It's
Oh, really?
doing it. Yeah, I'll do it because I don't want to let you down. But even to say that takes courage and boldness. And certainly many supervisors just wouldn't say it because you're not supposed to be doing it for anybody, you're doing it for yourself. But sometimes you need somebody to grab you and say, come, let me just take you out of this misery and you can really do it. This person, his PhD is extraordinary actually, and is being prepared for publication. So that is a great success story, but you know, some
Great
of
success
these,
for both of you.
you know, some of these methods can be slightly, as they say, alternative, you know. Spiritual thinking, nobody at a university will talk to you about spiritual thinking, obviously. Nobody.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not what people are going to be talking about.
And I'm sure there are hundreds or thousands of people out there falling through the cracks and being ready to quit all their work, all their research, and not getting it out there, not finalizing it. So people need you.
Well, and also, you know, the big thing, and you know this, how do you define your success?
Mm.
Like in education, in the end, it is the way it works is in the first instance is these grades and thresholds and degrees and diplomas and certificates. And it's good because it tells you something. And, not but, and in life,
Yeah,
you need to somehow find that thing that really is a success for you, which could be extremely different for different people, right? Different for you, different
yeah,
for me.
yeah.
And this is the very clever trick as well, to have confidence to say, actually, you know what? I've now done my PhD. I personally know a friend who
Mm.
did a PhD at a very fancy institution. It's a very good PhD, and this is a guy, and he says, you know what, I really don't want to be in higher education or in any education, and took time out and is at the minute living in some tiny place on the sea, finding his soul.
And
That's
this is okay, right?
and I think
Okay.
that's okay too. That's the point I'm making. That's okay
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
You know, it's a
perfect.
difference between, I think once you on the journey, why not get these qualifications? I mean, let's also not be so incredibly dramatic. With a little help, you can get your qualifications and think of them as something that you're getting, and then something else maybe will transpire with it. Just get it because it'll make you feel better if you're on the journey. Once you have it, this is also a moment to reconsider where you are, right?
Yeah.
and maybe take some less traveled roads.
Powerful way to end this episode. I love the conversation. And now I have my book hack, final
Ah,
part of this conversation. So I want you to pick one of my books.
aha.
You can see my list. Otherwise,
Yes, amazing. Oh, let me tell you something. The Code of Extraordinary Mind is the book that I read all the time because
oh, really?
because it's also part of my training actually.
Oh, great.
The Mind Valley training, and this was one of the books that I read also as part of the being trained to be a sixth phase meditation trainer, which I am now as well. So let's not pick this one
Great.
because I know it too well. So Atomic Habits.
Okay. And give me a page.
Ah,
So I'm going to read what's on that page, and we will discuss how this relates to your life and to your
okay,
journey.
so 112.
Okay. And a line, let me check if it's a page with content. No, it's empty. Do
Okay,
you want to change or?
let's go next to what is the next chapter? What does
Okay. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits.
yes.
Okay, tell me a line and I will read the context around this line.
Um 15.
15, okay. All right. Laszlo decided chess would be a suitable field for the experiment, and he laid out a plan to raise his children to become chess prodigies. The kids would be homeschooled, a rarity in Hungary at the time. The house would be filled with chess books and pictures of famous chess players. The children would play against each other constantly and compete in the best tournaments they could find. So how does this resonate with whatever you're doing?
So many times in our conversation, we talked about, I mentioned the word curiosity, and I also would mention another way, which is freedom. And even very early on, I would say it's extremely important to teach a young person that it is somehow their choice, their call. Yes, I encourage them. Yes, I make sure they go to school. Yes, I will be there to check what they're doing, as I say, as a parent. But there has to be a space where they at least feel they're choosing something. So there may be successes in this approach. Yes. And some people, I certainly, again, can think of some friends who are doing this to their children. I wouldn't be happy with that approach. This would not be something I would ever want to do, to make people do things. In my own in my own life, everybody thought I was going to be then a doctor, because I was also good at sciences. And it was just like pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I even was thinking, maybe it'd be nice to be a doctor, because, why not? And then there was some basic exercise. I think I did a first aid course and immediately, fainted at the sign of blood. And that was the end of that, because it was clear there's no way I could have any going that way. And everybody was in terrible shock and a disaster, absolute disaster. What will I do in my life? And it's ridiculous. You have to find your own path. So no. I also wanted to say something else here, which is that I actually started our whole conversation with gratitude, and I am grateful for even these various. I was born and brought up in communist Poland. It was quite tough, and it was a bit of a tough journey, really. So from living in a kind of one-bedroom apartment, still under communist regime, and still being lied to all the time. The fake news is not the recent invention, but the media. And I think about it, I think I really wouldn't use these words until recently, but I did manifest a life outside my family. And my family is great, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them and extended family in Poland, and I go, as you know, quite a lot. However, there is also these restrictions that family can put on you, these expectations that you think, oh, am I hating them? And so the first thing to do is really what I do with my clients and students and friends, is to say, no, get out of these expectations. So my thing, and I remember it as if it was yesterday, as a little teenager, I would go to the beach, sit on the beach, on the sand, and I still do it when I go back there, and sit cross-legged, not knowing anything about any meditation or manifestation, and look at the sea and close my eyes and say to myself, I will get out of this. I will go and have a different life. And I have.
Perfect. Amazing. Yeah.
And I did, and that's, you
did it.
And that's another whole book, how I manifested my different life.
Yeah.
But, I honestly wake up and every morning I think, Of course, there's scope for improvement, obviously, and we know that
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the time. You know, we still
All
have
the time. All the time.
all the time, but it's still
But
pretty
if you look back and see all this journey, it's
yeah,
amazing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is where, and we embrace the difficulties, and
Yeah.
that's somehow how we need to teach.
And this is another way you can relate to your
Exactly. This is how we need to, that's what we need to share with our students, our people who come to be coached, and anybody who comes our way who needs this support. We, you know, you go through obstacles, you grow, you learn, and you practice gratitude.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Agnieszka. It has been a wonderful conversation. It was
Thank
so
you.
lovely to see you again and learn more about what you do in your background.
And thank you so much for your inspirational presence. And I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Do good in the world somehow, a little bit.
Exactly.